Hello, and welcome to another installment of Shots at Distillation by D-Licious Media. And this is a big one. I'm going to be taking a big shot with this one. I'm going to be laying out something massive about the constitutional crisis we currently find ourselves in. I'd really like everyone to listen very carefully. This has to be said, and this message has to be shared far and wide. Every single American should hear and understand this message. So please listen, then help share this message far and wide. I'm going to lay it out, and then I'll lay out some strategies for getting it out to as many people as possible, as fast as possible. So here goes. Gonna take this shot, distill this issue, and then take a shot at getting the message out to as many people as possible, as fast as possible. So let's do this. Let's start with a shot, like always. Here we go. Edgar Allan Poe shot glass. Cheers. All right. So let's do this. So on January 6th, 2025, the United States Congress certified the 2024 election for President of the United States, awarding the presidency to Donald J. Trump and setting the table for him to be sworn in as Chief Executive and Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America. There is a massive constitutional problem with this, though. What is that massive problem? The events that took place 4 years earlier. The events of January 6th, 2021. January 6th, 2021. Never forget, hashtag always remember. Yeah, so here lies the massive problem. The events of January 6th, 2021, and how they collide with our Constitution. Specifically, the 14th Amendment of our United States Constitution. We all know what happened on January 6th, 2021. I, like so many others, watched the coup attempt, insurrection, and rebellion against the constitutional order of the United States and the sovereignty of the people of the United States live on TV. There are massive amounts of videos that document the events and testimony and accounts, tons of video, testimony, and accounts. We all know what happened. We all heard the lies that fueled the insurrection, rebellion, and attempted coup. And we all heard the rhetoric Trump and his people used to incite and direct the insurrection, rebellion, and attempted coup. Of course, there's plenty of denial of what happened that day, but it's all nonsense. The direction and the intent are overwhelmingly crystal clear. We all saw it, we heard everything, we saw everything. There's plenty of documentation of it. I can't spell out all of the details here, but I did a piece laying it all out in an episode of my podcast, A Little Wine, A Little Time, which you can find on the D-Licious Media YouTube channel where you're watching this, under the playlist A Little Wine, A Little Time. And it's I think it's called Getting Real About January 6th, or Let's Be Real About January 6th. Many deny or are in denial, but it's truly undeniable that January 6th, 2021 was a coup attempt, insurrection, and a rebellion against the constitutional order of the United States of America and against the sovereignty of the people of the United States of America. So here is the massive constitutional crisis. We have an individual scheduled to be sworn in as Chief Executive and Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America, who via Section 3 of the 14th Amendment of our Constitution is completely ineligible to hold that office or hold any office. Have you read it? I won't waste time reading the whole thing here because you're more than capable of finding it and reading it. But the gist is, Donald John Trump, the former 45th President of the United States, is completely and totally ineligible to hold any elective office in the United States of America. He not only participated in a coup attempt, insurrection, and rebellion, he was the leader and driving force behind it. He led it. He directed it. It was by him and for him. It was his attempt to overthrow the constitutional order of the United States of America and hold on to power via force. I've read Section 3 of the 14th Amendment many, many times now, and I keep asking myself, self, am I missing something? The amendment is very, very clear. Donald Trump's glaring and Donald Trump's glaringly obvious, crystal clear role in leadership in the coup attempt, insurrection, and rebellion against the United States of America, the Constitution of the United States of America, and the sovereignty of the American people of the United States of America makes him completely and totally ineligible to hold any constitutional office in this country. The 14th Amendment, Section 3. It's very clear, and so is Trump's role in January 6, 2021. On that day, he broke his own oath to the Constitution and completely and totally disqualified himself from being a constitutional office holder and representative of the sovereignty of the American people. If he is sworn in on January 20th, 2025, he'll be completely and totally illegitimate. If we allow it, the Constitution will be completely meaningless. His oath will mean absolutely nothing. It will mean as little to him as it meant the first time he took it and then broke it. He will be as illegitimate a president as someone who is under the age of 35 or someone who was not born in the United States. And that's all laid out in Article 2 of the United States Constitution. Donald Trump is completely ineligible to be sworn in as president of the United States. Trump has no true claim to be the legitimate 47th president. None. Absolutely none. Trump, via the events he led and directed on January 6, 2021, completely and totally disqualified him from being sworn in on January 20th, 2025. That day, he completely and totally forfeited his eligibility. But here's the truth. It should have never even gotten to this point and this constitutional crisis. In all reality, according to Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution, the moment the coup attempt, insurrection, and rebellion began, he immediately, in that moment, forfeited his right and privileges to hold that office. There have been several means and measures that could and should have been used to hold him accountable for the events he led and directed that day. But in all reality, the moment it all began, via his leadership and direction, power should have been immediately transferred to his vice president, Mike Pence. And Pence should have been sworn in as soon as possible. Donald Trump, the moment the attack began, became a complete and total illegitimate president. The coup attempt, insurrection, and rebellion he led and directed immediately disqualified him from being president of the United States of America. There were many other measures that could have been used, and we will get into those, but according to the 14th Amendment, none of those other measures should have been needed. Power should have immediately been transferred to his vice president, Mike Pence. Mike Pence should have been recognized as our 46th president in that moment, with no other needed action. In fact, during the attack, while seeking shelter from basically the paramilitary force Trump had assembled and directed, a mob who was chanting to hang him, hang the vice president, hang Mike Pence, Vice President Pence took some actions that would usually be the responsibility of the president, while the now illegitimate president was watching the attack on TV in the White House and no doubt hoping the coup attempt would succeed. So in that moment, as it should have been, Pence had taken on the powers outside of the office of the vice president and was for a time acting president. Constitutionally, he should have continued in that role and should have immediately directed federal law enforcement and national security agencies to apprehend Trump, who, as soon as the attack began at his direction, not only disqualified himself from office, but became the leader of an attempt to overthrow the United States of America, the Constitution, and the sovereignty of the American people. That's what should have happened. Vice President Pence should have immediately been sworn in as soon as was possible because he was in hiding from the paramilitary force Trump had unleashed on him and Congress, which, those are the checks on his power. This being completely unprecedented, however, and in the chaos of the moment, this reality might not have even occurred to anyone. It didn't occur to me until recently, and after familiarizing myself with the 14th Amendment and after reading it many times, there were many options as far as holding Trump accountable for the insurrection. He not only broke his oath to the Constitution, but actively directed a paramilitary group he'd assembled to attempt to overthrow it. The first and best option to deal with the situation appropriately was something that I and many others were thinking about at the time and calling for. Since Pence didn't immediately assume the presidency as would have been the correct option, many were calling for the evoking of Section 4 of the 25th Amendment. It should have been necessary because the 14th Amendment, but in the cloud and chaos of the coup attempt, that might have not even been considered. So that being what it is, the best course of action would have been evoking the 25th Amendment. Following the events of the day, from the attack during the day to the digestion of the attack into the evening, I truly thought that the 25th Amendment was going to be the course of action. However, it was not. That being the case, the list of individuals who broke their oath to the United States Constitution began to grow. The 25th Amendment was the clearest and best option to remedy the situation, but those who could and should have evoked it failed to use it, and in that failure, they failed the American people and broke their own oath to the Constitution. They, like Trump on that day, became illegitimate in reality. They became illegitimate, and in reality, we went several weeks without having a legitimate president and executive branch of government. From January 6th, until Joe Biden was sworn in, the United States was without a legitimate executive branch for all intents and purposes. They'd all broken their oath. So there was many ways to deal with this, but all have been neglected or have failed. The most constitutionally appropriate option was to immediately transfer power to the vice president. The vice president, who had been a literal target of the coup attempt and the paramilitary force Trump had unleashed on his checks to power. Since the 14th Amendment might not have even been considered in the cloud and chaos of the unprecedented moment, the next best and appropriate option was to evoke the 25th Amendment. Those who had the duty and responsibility to do so failed in that duty and responsibility, and in that failure, they joined Trump as far as breaking their oaths and becoming constitutionally illegitimate to hold and have the power of their offices. So after the failure to follow the 14th and 25th Amendment, the responsibility to appropriately address the crisis fell to Congress. And the courts. The legal system and the courts can be complicated and slow, and so for the sake of time, I won't dive into all that. No matter what method was used to hold Trump accountable as far as making himself a traitor to the United States, its constitution and the sovereignty of its people, the courts should have always played a part in addressing punishment. But what this piece is focused on is the ineligibility to hold office. So we will leave out the legal system and focus on Congress's responsibility and the Republican Party's responsibility. So Congress, after the failure to evoke the 14th or the 25th Amendment, the next best way to hold him accountable fell to Congress. The United States representatives voted to impeach him. It should have been unanimous based on the reality of the events and the situation, but only a few Republicans voted correctly. Then the case bounced to the United States Senate, which had a duty to convict. It is simply history now that the Republican majority failed us in their constitutional duty when they failed to convict him. A conviction would have removed Trump from office and disqualified him from ever holding office again. And again, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment should have no doubt taken care of all of that automatically and immediately. But since the 14th Amendment and the 25th Amendment were not invoked, as they could and should have been, the buck was passed to Congress, and they also failed. They failed us, and many representatives in the House of Representatives and the Senate joined Trump and those who were responsible for evoking the 14th and 25th Amendment and breaking their oath to the Constitution, and they became illegitimate office holders. So they became illegitimate as Trump and anyone who did not evoke the 14th and 25th Amendment. They became illegitimate the moment they failed to cast votes that would have appropriately held him accountable. So now Trump, anyone responsible for evoking the 14th and 25th Amendment, any members of the House of Representatives who failed to vote for impeachment, and any members of the United States Senate who failed to vote to convict Trump for his leadership and direction of the coup attempt, insurrection, and rebellion, all have broken their oaths and responsibility to the United States Constitution and the sovereignty of the American people. A lot of individuals who swore an oath to this country and its Constitution broke their oaths, and in breaking their oaths, became completely and totally ineligible to hold any office that requires an oath to the country, its Constitution, and the sovereignty of the American people. Everything Trump did, and everyone down the line who broke their oaths, are totally and completely ineligible to hold public office in the United States of America, constitutionally. They aided and abetted a former president who, on January 6th, directed an attack on the country and the Constitution. They swore an oath to protect. They swore an oath to the country, and they broke it. They are illegitimate, and they have been illegitimate since the moment they broke their oaths. In reality, an official action or any vote they've cast is illegitimate and void. The next entity that failed the country via the 14th Amendment is the Republican Party. Because of the events of January 6, 2021, and how that situation is addressed by the Constitution, the Republican Party nominated a candidate that was completely and totally ineligible and disqualified to take and hold that office. Every vote cast for Trump is void and illegitimate because of his leadership role in the coup attempt, insurrection, and rebellion. Members of the Electoral College also swear an oath to the Constitution, which not only makes every vote and Electoral College vote for Trump void and illegitimate, but also means the Electoral College members who cast their votes for Donald Trump broke their oaths to the Constitution and the sovereignty of the American people. Void, illegitimate. All a violation of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. Not only that, any elected official, from members of Congress to state representatives and state-level executives who have sworn an oath to the Constitution, have broken their oaths to the Constitution and have downright aided and abetted a former president who led and directed a coup attempt, insurrection, and rebellion against the United States. So quick summary. The moment the coup attempt started, Donald Trump forfeited his role as 45th President of the United States. He became an enemy of the country, its Constitution, and the sovereignty of the American people. His office should have been stripped from him immediately. And in reality, it was even if it wasn't recognized. In that moment, Trump had as much right to be president as someone who was found to be actually 34 or 33 if they forged their birth certificate and, we found out they're 34 or 33 years old, or we found that they forged a birth certificate and were born in Canada or Mexico, for example. Mike Pence, in reality, should have been immediately sworn in as the 46th president of the United States of America. Since that moment, there were other means and moments to hold Trump accountable, And any elected official who has sworn an oath to the Constitution immediately became illegitimate the moment they let the opportunities pass or failed to vote to impeach, convict, or if they have supported his illegitimate campaign for re-election. He was, and will always be disqualified and ineligible for that. The moments they broke their oaths, and every moment they broke their oaths, any official action they've taken, such as voting on legislation or other actions, are unconstitutional, illegitimate, and void. I know this is very heavy, but there is no other way to see it if we still care about the Constitution of the United States of America. If Trump is sworn in on January 20th, 2025, our Constitution literally means absolutely nothing. This might upset many people who voted for Trump in the election. This isn't the place to lay out just how horrible Trump is in just about every way, from economics to foreign policy to so many of the bad things he says he'll do and the horrible people he has around him. But I guess people have the right to be irresponsible with their duties as American voters and as American citizens, and that's an argument for a different day. However, they should have never had the option to cast those votes for someone who, via our Constitution, is, and always will be ineligible to hold the office. The Republican Party should never have nominated him because of the 14th Amendment. The Republican Party was just another in a line of individuals and entities that failed to appropriately deal with the crisis. So this is where we are. An individual who led and directed a coup attempt, insurrection, and rebellion against the United States of America, its Constitution, and the sovereignty of the American people is scheduled to be sworn in illegitimately and retake an oath he has already broken. That doesn't take into account all the ways Trump and his people are threatening to dismantle our constitutional republic if that is allowed to take place. It will all be illegitimate, but that alone means nothing if the Constitution is made meaningless by swearing him in on that day. If he is sworn in, this ceases to be the United States of America governed by our Constitution. That's where we are. So yeah, this is where we are. But what do we do about it? How do we keep our constitutional republic intact and legitimate? The first step is getting this message out there as fast and as far as possible. I need your help blasting this out as far and wide as possible and as fast as possible. We only have a little over a week at the time of the release of this podcast. To save our democracy and our constitutional republic from an individual who cares nothing about it, has already broken the first oath he took when sworn in 2016, and will do everything possible to dismantle our constitutional order if given the means and opportunity. He broke his oath in the worst way possible the first time around. His oath and the Constitution mean nothing to him, and let's not forget his relationship with a foreign dictator, a dictator whose life mission has been to tear the United States down and has supported Trump via propaganda efforts on social media platforms in all 3 elections he has run in. So yeah, we need to get this message out as far and as fast as possible. Share this everywhere. Share the 14th Amendment everywhere, and share things like January 6th footage and testimony along with it. Together, we can do this, and together we can save this country from an individual who has no legitimate claim to be our chief executive and commander-in-chief. Share this with everyone you can, on every platform you can, as much as possible in the next few days and a little over a week. We can do this if we can build enough support and build a serious movement around it. On Facebook, share it regularly on your feed. Share it in as many Facebook groups as you can. If you aren't in Facebook groups, find groups to join and share this message in. You can share this piece, and you can share it in your own words. Go to Facebook walls of politicians, national media, and local media. Share it with people up and down, comment threads on those pages and ask them to share as well. Tag politicians and members of the media. If as many of us do this as possible, we could possibly get this movement on the radar of important politicians and media. And if they can, if they catch on, they can spread the message and movement to their audiences. We can also blast it out on Twitter, tag politicians and media outlets and personalities, and hopes they see it and can help spread the message and the movement. You can also use Instagram and TikTok. You can break down the message into videos and direct people to this piece. Platforms like Threads and Blue Sky could be useful too. They're less used platforms, so there is less noise, and that may allow the message to get through better than on some more crowded, cluttered platforms as far as reaching politicians and media sources with reach themselves and larger audiences. Use the same strategies as I laid out with Facebook and Twitter, posted in comment threads on walls of politicians, media outlets, media personalities. If we can get them to spread the message and the movement to their audiences, we might just have a chance. We cannot not try. We can't not try. We can spend as much time as we have the next several days and a little over a week blasting this message out and doing everything we can to build it into a movement. If it gets enough support, it could work. But what is the next step and steps? If we can get enough people to hear this message and support the movement, the members of Congress that upheld their oaths can meet to recertify the election with only the legitimate electors who upheld their oaths of office. All the electors who cast votes for Trump have broken their oaths via the 14th Amendment, and those votes are void. Any Congress members, governors, state representatives who have aided and abetted Trump are currently fraudulently holding offices they are constitutionally ineligible to hold. They've broken their oaths through the Constitution. They've aided and abetted Trump, who attacked this country, this Constitution, and the American people. So with that being said, and with that being the case, the January 6th certification is illegitimate and void. All electors who broke their oaths and cast votes for Trump are illegitimate and their votes are void. All votes for Trump are unconstitutional, and for that reason, they are illegitimate and void. The only constitutional votes are from those electors who cast their votes for Kamala Harris. According to the Constitution, 270 electoral votes are required. Harris is short of that mark, so constitutionally, the duty of picking the next legitimate president falls on the House of Representatives, because Trump has been an illegitimate president since the moment the coup attempt, insurrection, and rebellion began. At his direction and with his leadership, any members of the House that voted against impeachment have broken their oaths to the Constitution, and they have been illegitimate since the moment they cast those votes and aided and abetted the leader of an insurrection and rebellion. So the only legitimate members that can constitutionally be a part of picking the next president are those who voted to impeach, mostly Democrats and a few Republicans. So that's where we sit. This is where we are. To save our democracy and our constitutional republic, we need to get this message out as far and as fast as possible in the hopes of reaching the politicians and elected officials that can act accordingly. And the final solution to this massive crisis we find ourselves in will result in the remaining legitimate members of Congress selecting the next legitimate president of the United States of America. The Constitution just might save this country after all. It might save this country and it might save itself. The Constitution, but after, just might save this country after all, but it's going to take all of us pushing this message as hard as possible these next few days and a little over a week to make it possible. We've got to January 20th and hopefully sooner. So that's all I have for now. Shots of Distillation. Subscribe to the D-Licious Media YouTube channel, please. I'd love to hear from you in the comments about this, and please share. I'd love for you to check out some of my other content at some point, but for the sake of the country, sharing this message is the most important thing these next few days and weeks. Please share, share, share. I'll be releasing some shorter, more condensed versions of this message in the next few days as well. So please stay tuned, like and comment. That will help drive it up in algorithms. Whatever happens, don't despair. We are strong together, and we will find a way out of this Trump mess and this crisis. Maybe this is it. We shall see. But this has been Shots of Distillation. That's all. I'm going to finish it with a shot, like always. My Edgar Allan Poe shot glass. Cheers. Stay well. Peace.